Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to welcome two of our leadership program folks into the studio today to talk about this subject of positive intelligence. For that, I have two very positively intelligent people. One is Anna Zaldarriaga, who is our Senior VP of People Operations, and many of you will know that as her role at our organization is human resources, as well as many other things that help us create our culture and help us maintain it, and many other things. And I also have invited Lisa Donlan with us today, who has worked with us for, I don't know, Lisa, what has it been, about 5 years, 6 years?
I think this is 7th or 8th, depending on
what roles. Gosh.
Yes, it's your 7th. Yeah.
It has flown by. Anyway, 7th or 8th, Anna and I've worked together like 20 decades now. But Lisa, you're a newbie at 7 or 8, which most people, that's eternity. But we're very lucky to have Lisa, who works as a community school director in one of our school-based programs out in Bed-Stuy, and she supports students, families, teachers with kind of academic and social emotional learning, restorative practices, mental and physical health resources, lots of other things. And before that, Lisa had a long career doing many things, working at Hachette. Did I say that correctly?
Perfect.
The publishing company. She also was a community organizer on the Lower East Side for years, and really always with the point of helping young people and helping folks succeed. And so I brought both of them together for the reasons of who they are and what they do and what they're committed to, but also because when we started doing positive intelligence with our staff, these two kind of took to it right away and really sucked the marrow from the bone, so to speak, of what this program can give you. And I'm feeling very Shakespearean today. Who knows what's going to happen? They really held the banner of this to get some of our other employees excited about it. So what is positive intelligence and why are we talking about it? So let me just give a brief introduction, then I'm going to ask questions of these two marvels here who really led it within our company and still do to a large extent. So positive intelligence is a program by Shirzad Chamine based on his lectures out of Stanford University. Okay. And he started to create it when he was in the master's program there at Stanford. And he based it upon a ton of research in neuroscience, in a mixture of what we were starting to learn about the brain, but also what's in kind of performance metrics and seeing how people perform, how they succeed at work, and kind of combining all these things of what was happening in mental health and brain science and the best of, mindfulness and also performance at work. And so that was interesting to me. It was brought to me during COVID, actually, by Mark Taylor from Vistage, who we have heard talk on a Working Genius episode. And the reason that I bring up positive intelligence is because we're doing a little series right now on different programs that you can bring in, different assessments that you can do with your team to help get better performance out of teams, but also they can help create better culture. And one of the things around why we're focusing on positive intelligence as one of those options is because it can be helpful anytime. We used it. I first was introduced to it during COVID, and I loved this quote that is at the very beginning of the book that he says when he starts to define what is positive intelligence and what he calls PQ, which is, you think of IQ as your intelligence quotient. You think of EQ, we talk about here a lot, as your emotional intelligence quotient. And he talks about PQ as your kind of positive intelligence. And one of the things he said is after they had come, he was working in an organization and they had gone through a big crisis. And he said this question: what do we need to do so that within 3 years we can say this current crisis was the best thing that could have happened to our company? And at the time, that idea of what could we say in 3 years, what could we do that could say that this was the best thing that could have happened to our company, was something I couldn't imagine at the time. Really, when COVID hit, like many businesses and people out there, we lost our business overnight and had to shift so quickly because so much of our work was in New York City public school system. And so that took out a large portion of what we did. And so it was really scary to try to keep everybody working. I was very afraid I had all these people that were depending on me to make sure that for their livelihoods. And also that was just our staff, but then to also make sure that all these students who were overnight couldn't attend school, which was their livelihood to a large extent, and there was difficult. And so one of the things when I read that, and I thought, okay, what could I do now that could make this happen? And so positive intelligence was something that we tried, and it really was affirming to me because you take an assessment like many of the things do. It doesn't take long. It takes, 5 minutes. I think it might be the shortest assessment that we did. It's a self-assessment. It basically asks you a bunch of questions. You reply, and then it gives you a report right away. It's free. That's another positive about positive intelligence. It's free. Anybody can do this online, and we'll put that in the liner notes, how you can get to the assessment. It's not ours. It belongs to Shirzad Chamine and his company, who's a very big coaching organization. And basically, it gives you what your top saboteurs are. And that's a word that we'll use a lot today when we're talking about it, and and the things that you can do to help yourself when those saboteurs come up. Because the basic idea, if we were to break it down, positive intelligence is like, how much is your brain working to help you, and how much is your brain working against you? And the idea of positive intelligence, and some people have a real prickle with it at first because they think it's something like, related to positive, what's that word?
Toxic positivity.
Toxicity.
Yeah, am I saying it right? I don't know. It sounded weird coming
Positive
out.
toxicity?
There you
Toxic
go.
positivity. No, it's toxic.
Positivity.
It's the opposite. Toxic positivity.
So positive, it's
Thank
toxic.
you, Anna. That's why you're here today. Toxic positivity is not about just like, let's pretend we're all positive. It's not that at all. It's saying you have some parts of your brain that are very sage and wise and help you get through anything, help you solve problems, help you make decisions, help you see greater possibilities. The other part is the times that your brain and these saboteurs that come from our childhood or our past or have worked up over time to protect us now are not really necessary and sometimes work against us. And so it's about this assessment that you take, this 5-minute assessment, gives you kind of your top saboteurs. And then you start to go, okay, how can I break down when these get in my way in my personal life or at work? It's interesting because when we did it, I've done it both ways. You can do it personally, or you can also share your results if you have a very high trust team, you can share those results with others in a safe way. It could be with a facilitator. I recommend it with a facilitator, but it could also be with somebody else or with each other, that you share some of those things and how those get in the way in a meeting, for instance, or how those might get in the way when you're trying to pitch to a client, or how those might get in the way when you're having trouble with a teammate. All of those things, those saboteurs, are things that we're aware of. Other people are aware of. They may not know the word for it. And how do we get a little bit better at this? I'm a big believer, as you know, that we are who we are in life and at work. And if we can work on this stuff that is huge to our existence at work, it will help our personal life and vice versa. And so when I first did it, I did it with a separate group of CEOs, and we were all working on it during COVID. And then when you start to see these saboteurs, you work on these, what he calls PQ reps, these things that little moments of mindfulness and so forth that you can work on throughout the day that help you start to see things in a positive way and get your brain working for you. It was extremely helpful. I talked a lot about it to Anna, who loves this kind of stuff as well. And she's like, Christine, I think we should do it with our staff when we come back from COVID, because she was very astute in recognizing that once COVID ended, the trauma and the things that people had gone through hadn't ended, right? In some cases, they were just ramping up. And so we had brought back our staff and thought, how do we do this? And so Anna really spearheaded it with a group of volunteer folks in our company who wanted to do it. We put it out and said, it's free for whoever, the first, 20 people, whoever wants to do it. You don't have to do it, but it's volunteer. And so Lisa was part of that cohort that did it. And so a lot of the questions I'm going to ask them from how it worked within our own organization, but also for them personally, and how potentially it could work for yours. Okay. So it's a lot of me, but now it's going to be more them. So my first question, I'm going to just say, I'll just start with Lisa. I'll just start with you. Sure. Can you explain from your point of view, anything that I didn't mention about what positive intelligence is, or why you think it's important to you, and why is it important for people's daily lives or in the workplace.
Yeah, I just want to start by calling back, though, to that first time you brought it into the office when you said, what do we need to do so that in 3 years, this pandemic, and it was actually still ongoing. It wasn't over. We were at a phase of over, but it was not over. And I was so struck by that viewpoint. It fundamentally changed me because I thought, what an incredible framing for finding the gift. And it really fit with my personality, which is really all about I'm a marathon runner, taking the big goal, impossible, frightening goal, and breaking it down into manageable steps that you can take now to reach that goal. And I was really struck by it. And it fits with my personality as an athlete. I'm an athlete, I'm a runner. I've come from a family of athletes where discipline and sort of focus is a big part of how we work. And this is really about treating your brain like a muscle. I do a lot to keep myself sane and safe and healthy. I do yoga in addition to my running. I do Pilates. I do a lot of mindfulness. I do a lot of strength training as I get older, and I'm trying to hold on to that lean muscle mass that gets away from us. And this is very much the same thing. This is treating your brain like a muscle and training it to have self-command, so that we're doing less of that natural self-sabotage that is a result of these sort of maladaptive strategies that at one time in our life protected us and kept us safe. But now we're overusing those things. My son is a professional athlete. He plays soccer. And I tend to think of
he's awesome. I'm a fan.
I tend to think of this as like he's got a really good right foot. But if he only used that right foot, that would become a liability. He's had to learn to use his left foot and train with the weaker side. And I feel like that's sort of the same with positive intelligence. We have our strengths. We tend to go to them. They feel good. We know that we have that mastery. But there's this other side, these unexplored aspects of ourselves that we also need to work. And I tend to think of this in terms of the saboteur, and then what we didn't bring up, which is the sages, which is the higher order skills that we need to replace that sabotage or saboteur behavior with sort of the executive functions. Harking back to the neurological issues, it's way more complicated than I can explain, but thinking of using other parts of our brain that use these higher order executive function, more complex thinking, and replacing the sabotage with the sages.
I love it. That from the word, you had me at maladaptive, Lisa. You can tell she's an educator, and why you just said that so beautifully, much better than me. And I feel like I need to go to you for my health coaching as well, because I need to work on some strength training too. So anyway, it's strength training for our brain. I love that. And so it's very clear, even from that description that she just gave, how that's important for our daily lives and our workplace. Anna, anything else that you can think of what this means to you, or why you were so taken with it?
Yeah, I think right there, just listening to Lisa, I can already hear some differences of how it spoke to her and how it spoke to me. For her, it's about strength training, and that really correlates with her life and kind of the language she already speaks. When I speak about positive intelligence, I think of it as a system. And what I love about it, it's kind of a universal system, because you can find the language that you need to hear to make this work for you. So for me, a long time ago, I was into strength training in terms of my body, but at the core of who I am, what I really focus on is social emotional health, right? And so when I think about that, it's the ability to change the narrative of what holds us back. And that's what I've always loved about the concept of the saboteur and the sage. It's that it's not that there's a flaw in you, but that there's this character that comes up that gets in the way of your best self, that takes up all of your mental space and your brain activity, and that it gives it a way of naming that, so that you can say, hey, there you are. You know what? I don't really want to interface with you, and I need you to kind of move over to the side, instead of saying, oh, I'm an avoider, right? I'm such a hypervigilant person. Instead, like, oh, there's my hypervigilant character coming up, and he's trying to play a part in this story right now, and I don't want him in my story. So for me, it's about changing the narrative of what's happening in a situation or an experience, so that instead we're working on the most positive brain space and achieving results that are great for us, and walking away from a negative story that's holding us back.
I love that yours is gendered. Like it's a he. The problem pieces of your brain are a he.
The avoider is a she for some reason, which we can explore that in a whole nother episode, right?
So what Anna's talking about are a few examples of the saboteurs, and I'm just trying to remember how many there are altogether. Do you
There's
guys remember?
9 plus the judge.
There's 9 plus everybody has what they call the judge. And then
Right.
there's 9 other saboteurs, and you get a couple of your top ones. I mean, some people I look at, when I'm coaching people, I actually use this one all the time. This is great in a coaching session because we can see like, oh, what's getting in the way? Because these are, as they said, repeatable patterns that we tend to go into. What's also interesting about them. So my top 2 are pleaser and avoider. Oh, it's hard to admit it, but those are 2. But it's a lot less hard than it used to be, right? Because when you first see it, no one's very happy. It's not like you go, oh, great, I got the best ones. You know, they're all bad. I'm like, what are the good ones? That's what I want. But they're all bad because that's not who you are. It's just the things, as Anna said, that pop up in these circumstances. And what's interesting to me is that they also are your brilliance. So when you're in line and when they're in equilibrium, the part of me that the negative part of pleaser is really the part of being somebody that's great with people, that understands what people need. But when it gets out of whack, it goes into a pleaser mode. Same thing with avoider. I have that. It sounds like Anna does too, but that is the piece of me
Try
that
being in a meeting with you and me.
Yeah. We'd love to avoid. We'll talk about our personal lives
Everything
forever.
else.
But also, I'm great on vacation. Like, I can let work go. I'm great at a part. Like, I don't stress about it afterwards. That part of me is a positive. But when it can kind of go out of whack when there's something that really needs to be dealt with and I'm avoiding it, right? So it's about a lot of times those saboteurs, when you look at them, they have a basis in something that is actually brilliant about you. It's just how do you keep it, how do you keep it in balance?
It's your right foot.
Yes.
It's your right foot.
I love that.
I just wanted to mention too that I took the test several times. As you said, it's free, it's accessible. So I've checked in on myself at various points, and I've had the same characteristics because it gives you your top 3 or 4. I have found that the degrees and the order change. And I noticed that they're very much in keeping largely with my professional focus. When I'm in the planning stage, I'm probably going to be more hypervigilant or stickler. When I'm in the launching stage, I'm definitely going to be more avoidant. If I'm going to be in the maintaining stage, I might slip into some more pleaser. Depending on what skills I'm having to call out, it's also raising those saboteur factors. To your point, Christine.
And so you mentioned earlier, Lisa, the sage mode. And sometimes we get, because of the way our brains work, we focus so much on the saboteurs because our natural instinct is to try to be perfect. And so we want to get rid of the saboteurs as if we could, right? And as my husband said to me years and years ago, he said, listen, Christine, these things don't go away within us. The things that get in we didn't know to call them saboteurs then. He says, just that hopefully you have a little more space around them and you don't have to live with them quite as long. Like you can recognize it and kind of shift a little bit sooner. So it's not like you can ever just say, okay, I'm going to get rid of pleaser and avoider, check, and that you'll be living in your sage all the time. And it's not that way, right? But it is that you can not suffer from it as much and not be a victim of your brain working against you as much. And you can then solve problems better and come up with solutions that are going to make change when things are hard.
Exactly.
So talk about a little bit, Lisa, from your experience, that sage mode and how it kind of relates to positive intelligence.
Right. Anna said it really well when she mentioned that really what you want to do is run your brain and not have your brain run you, which is what your husband's referring to. How am I getting the space here? And we do that by, as Anna said, sort of just stopping and identifying those saboteurs. And that's really a huge step right there. And that requires a certain kind of muscle. And that's what the PQ reps help us to do, where we're taking a mindful moment. It might be our breath. It might be tactile. It might be visual. It might be about being physically grounded or auditory. But we take those little bite of mindful moments to ground ourselves. And then we consciously access these sage powers. And those are, as I said, sort of our higher order thinking or being. That's when we're being empathetic, when we're being curious, when we're innovative, when we're solving problems, when we're actually moving into action, when we're navigating difficult pathways and choices. Those are the sage powers. And those are the muscles that we want to build as we start to recognize and reduce the impulsive sort of role of the saboteur and consciously try to connect to these very grounded, action-oriented, and almost in some ways other-oriented approaches. I'm curious about you. I need to innovate and solve this problem. I need to navigate this sticky situation. I need to show empathy to this person I'm in conflict with. And that's how we sort of fight the self-sabotage and get to a better solution.
Yeah, it's obviously easier said than done,
Yes.
but it's true. There are ways that he gives you. One thing I do like about this is that it becomes very actionable. And, on this podcast, in every episode that we do, we really try to give actionable tips about how you can do that. And that's one thing I like about Shirzad's work as well, is that the theory is strong and sage, but also that then he gives actionable tips about how you can actually do this. So if you're listening to Lisa and you're like, yeah, but how do I move from this sage or this saboteur place to a more sage place, he gives you some tips upon that. Is there any that you guys used more than others? Is there one that you used when you saw this happening, or one that you like, one tip that Shirzad mentioned?
Yeah. So one of my top 3 is restless, which means like I'm constantly like on the go. So I love big projects, right? Big events that have lots of moving parts, last minute things, because it keeps me super busy. But when it couples with my avoider, then I get nothing done. I sit down, I'm going to tackle this like really long 500-page employee handbook and revamp it. And I sit down and I'm like, oh, look at that though. That needs to be moved. Oh, look, an email pop up. So for me, I'm always distracted by the shiny thing. And we've all talked about the benefits of meditation. Obviously that is everywhere, from schools to businesses to personal lives. But meditation is really, really hard for a person like me who's restless. And what I loved about what Shirzad did was he kind of reminded us that there's multiple ways of meditating and that you could use all of your different senses to do that. And once he did that, I kind of like really latched onto that, because this concept of like quieting your mind but not being still was so refreshing to me, that like you could quiet your mind while taking a walk looking at the horizon, or you could quiet your mind and just clench the muscles of your feet and your legs and your thighs, and moving that through your body. And really what I truly took away from that was that it's not just about meditating, that positive intelligence is really about trying to rewire your brain synapses to break a habit and change the patterns of how you think and act in your life. And so when you're walking, but you're thinking and looking at the horizon, you can't be distracted by something else. Your saboteur can't come up because you're actually focusing on walking and looking. And for me, that was just so, I don't know, there was so much space around that because I really can't sit still to meditate. So just all the different examples in this program of resettling yourself, recentering your body and mind, and taking a pause so that you could realign your thoughts and make a different decision and then take a different course of action was simple, easy to do, 100% accessible all the time. And even now, I might not be doing it the way the program was asking you to do, but all of us are on our phones, right? We get on the bus, we're going to multitask. We get on the train, we're going to multitask. I take the ferry. A lot of us don't have access to the ferry, but I used to take it all the time and multitask. And now I think of Shirzad and I'm like, oh, I'm going to put my phone down. I'm blessed right now to be able to look out of this window and look at the skyline and be in my visioning and innovating moments and just soak that in. And when I do that, my mind kind of changes, it realigns, gives me more space. And at the same time, when you have more space, you can change your focus. So that I have taken away 100%. It lives in me now. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
And you're not sitting in a meditation room.
No.
Right? I've done that for 20 minutes. This is in the action.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity when things are unfolding to take a mindful moment because you've learned these techniques, you've practiced them, and they allow you to be present. If you're not ruminating about the past or worrying about the future, you are already on your way to this sage mode just by having attention to this moment. And I also like that it's about consistency and little chunks. A 20-minute, twice a day sit could be impossible for some people. It just, they don't have the time or they don't have the temperament. But everybody can do 10-second reps.
Absolutely.
That's 3 breaths. And if you do that 100 times a day, which is what the goal of the program is ultimately that you build up to, that's about 10-15 minutes a day. That's less than 2% of your waking hours. But you are now building that positive brain muscle and quieting the things that sabotage you. It's a really small investment, and it saves you in the moment from aggravating your own situation by allowing your saboteurs, which, by the way, mirror neurons, people. It is contagious. If I'm coming in anxious, hypervigilant, controlling, don't think that it doesn't wake up other people's saboteurs.
Absolutely.
And all of a sudden, we've got a meeting full of saboteurs dealing with each other. We don't get anywhere near where we need to be, and we've destroyed maybe our team, ambiance. This is how it's helpful.
I just want to echo what Lisa's saying. Number one, small incremental change, big results in the end, right? It's just like working out that first, like all you can do is like a half a push-up against a wall. So I love that just analogy to that kind of strength training. But I really wanted to comment on the mirror neurons. When we first did this in our company, we broke up into groups according to our saboteur, and we could change, and pick, right? We could change groups and also pick whatever group we wanted to be in based on our top 3. And one time I picked the avoider. And so we're in a group with all other avoiders. Okay. And talk about mirror neuroning. We were like, hi. So, okay, what do you want to talk about? And like, it was so drawn out. We talked about everything but the work of positive intelligence and how it was showing up in our lives. We talked about our personal lives, the room we were in, what we were going to do that day. And so it had to take one of us to kind of step out of that and be like, hey, avoider, can you move over? Because we have some work to do. It had to take the action of one person kind of initiating it so that the rest of us were like, oh, right. Avoider, get out of the way. But if not, we would just mirrored ourselves like we were in a great hall, of trick mirrors, been like, ding, 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 all day long. We could have sat there for an hour doing
I love it. And meanwhile, the hypervigilant group probably had the answer in like 5
and
seconds.
They had a list.
Move on.
Yeah.
Hyperachievers.
Exactly.
Hyperachievers, for sure.
Yes, they had the pens out ready to go.
It's true. And then they're like, this is so annoying that this is taking so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating to see. And then it also helps you when you're coaching people with your team. So Anna reports to me, and it's interesting hearing you talk about when your restlessness and your avoider come out. I can now have a vocabulary that isn't so daunting, that she recognizes that we've talked about. I'm not catching her doing something bad, but instead I can be like, hey, how's it going? Are you feeling a little restless right now? And she can be like, oh my God, yes, I'm having so much trouble. Yeah. And then we can say like, okay, well, what can we do about it? But just saying it kind of makes it settle.
Absolutely.
Right? To Lisa's point, just seeing it makes it settle. You don't have to do big, huge. This isn't about big, huge change. Small. I love what you guys said. Small incremental movements. So it's also a little bits of mini meditations are some of the tips, right? It can be, we've talked about this in some other episodes, just feeling that Elaine Porcher we work with talks about. I love this one where you're just feeling your tip of your thumb and the tip of your forefinger, rubbing them together so gently to try to feel your fingerprints. And it's hard to do at first, and then you can get really good at it. But that somehow just brings me right in. And if I'm in a meeting, no one has to see me doing this. I can do this in my lap under the desk. I can do it when I'm driving with my teenagers around the steering wheel, when I'm about to explode. I can just kind of do this for a second, and then I can come at it more from a sage perspective rather than a saboteur, which then ignites their saboteurs, and we're just, in this
off
cosmic Yes, we're off to the races for sure. So those are some, the other thing, and Lisa alluded to it earlier, another tip that you can do is some questions that you have that bring you into a sage mode. So I think you even started to say some of them, Lisa, but like the ones that I love, where you talked about these three gifts: the gift of knowledge, the gift of power, and the gift of inspiration. So when something is going wrong, or when you start to go, oh God, when a stress happens at work, or, you've lost a big client or whatever's happening, you can say, what knowledge would I need to gain so the payoff in the future will be greater than what is happening right now? Right. So that's like that beginning question that I mentioned. The gift of, and if you could answer that, that gets you into a thinking of like, how can I turn, not just wallow in this negativity or in my fear, but how can I start to turn this into something by thinking about what knowledge am I getting? The gift of power I love too, because it's what is the gift of power growing in me? Like Lisa said at the gym, what am I learning? Because we know that you learn by failing. You learn to walk by falling down, right? You learn all of these things you learn to play a concerto by doing it wrong millions and millions of times. And it's the same thing with life, right? So what is growing in me? Okay, I'm having to have more difficult conversations. Therefore, I'm going to be better in the future about these difficult conversations, right? So it's kind of like the muscle that you talked about, Lisa. And then the gift of inspiration. You commit to an action that you wouldn't have committed to if this hadn't happened before, right? So the action itself becomes the gift. Like, okay, in the future, I'm not going to avoid these big conversations, maybe about the goal that I'm not hitting at work. I'm going to go to my boss with that ahead of time rather than just waiting to get caught in something.
Right.
Right. So that is the gift, that gift of inspiration. So sometimes I have those little three gifts written up by my computer, because I just need a reminder of like, okay, when things are bad or when I'm really fearful about something not hitting a goal or whatever, can I look at what those three things are? And that shifts me into a sage mode, which gets me into problem solving, which gets me into that prefrontal cortex where all that executive functioning is happening, where actually you can think rather than the deeper, darker recesses of the brain
Where
where
you're
we're
reactive.
just
Right.
we're reactive.
Right. Well, underlying all of this is a lovely parable that Shiraz uses, but underlying it is, who's to say what is good and what is bad? And that's really where you find the sweet spot of the gift. Something happens, it's stressful, it's confusing, it's not what you anticipated, it feels like a really bad outcome. And then to turn, as you do when you look at your three things on the wall, and say, well, where is the gift in this? Or what do I have to start doing now to get to the gift? Now you're calling up your sage powers. What problem do I have to solve? What do I have to be curious about? Where do I have to use my empathy? What do I need to navigate? All of a sudden, you're on that path just by the very act of looking for the gift. I signed up for the 6-week boot camp because I'd had a horrible trauma in my life. We had gotten invited to do this deeper dive. When we had to do the meeting with the peers to do some of this processing, was just not convenient for my work day. I had a commitment that day, that time. And it wasn't impossible to delegate, but it felt like something I shouldn't probably delegate. I should handle it. But then I had this personal trauma. My husband of 34 years left me basically overnight because he fell in love with a colleague over Zoom. And all of a sudden I found myself just devastated. And I thought, you know what? I need to do this positive intelligence. And I quickly signed up for it. I started doing yoga nidra and doubled down on my running and, started therapy, all the things that you need to do to move forward. But that was my driving light, which is, what do I need to do now so that in, I don't know how many years, 2, 3, 5, I can turn around and say, you know what? This was the best thing that could have happened to me. What do I need to put into my life so that I am only operating from gifts?
I love that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I love that.
I made the time for it and it paid off. It really did.
Yeah.
Here it is 10 months later and, I'm moving really forward.
Right. And I'm sure 10 months feels like a long time to you, but it's really rather quick. And look at where you've come.
Right.
I mean, the fascinating thing to me, thank you for sharing that, first of all, because that's a difficult thing to share. But what I find fascinating about that is, of course, as you're employer, I didn't know all the things you were going through, right? We don't know what our staff,
Right.
what everyone's going through, but everyone's going through
That's
something.
right.
So when people say to me, sounds too much like therapy, I'm not doing this with my staff, I can understand it. And if you do have the teams that can do it, or you can offer something like this to your staff, what's great is the people like Lisa out there that might really need it, right? Who's a great employee, who may just be stuck in a difficult time or who knows what, can latch on to something that can give them the abilities to be better in their jobs, but also more fuller, happier people in their lives. What a wonderful gift to have. And Anna, I commend you for pushing me to do this with the staff, because I was one of those CEOs who was like, it was great for me. I like talking about it, but I'm scared to do this with my teams, as if I'm pushing something on them that is too therapeutic, right? And you were like, no, I think we can do it. And, I insisted that it be volunteer. But other than that, you really pushed me in a way that I needed it to say, yeah, no, people need this. And I don't even know if you knew what Lisa was going through. I mean, there's a lot of other people who probably all have a story, not Lisa's story, but have something else that they were going through, right?
That's right.
And I wasn't even part of those breakouts that you did, but it's so important because everybody's going through something. And if something like this, a 5-minute assessment and a way to share this in a team of people that want to talk about this, what a gift. So, I applaud you, Lisa, for making time for it. And I applaud you, Anna, for making us do it. Anything else, Anna, that you can see as an organization that can be helpful for building culture?
Of course. I could go on and on about positive intelligence, Trevor, because I'm really such a big fan. The first thing I want to say is that you're right. We all have things that are going on, right? And we don't know it, but it affects us. And it doesn't even have to be an emotional situation. Let's just talk about physical health right now. If you were to poll our company right now at this moment, flu season in New York City, there's flu, COVID, RSV, walking pneumonia. Our team has been sick for weeks. And that layered on top of this work can trigger any of those saboteurs to just be at their 10 out of 10. If you're an avoider, you're done. I'm done. I'm physically checked out and I'm mentally checked out, right? So number one, it's just important to know that there's always something going on with your employees, no matter what, because we're human, right? So check that. Number two, time goes by very quickly. Christine, 3 years ago, when you brought up that question, where are we going to be in 3 years? How can we say that we've grown and learned out of this moment? I don't know if you remember this, but what we ended up doing after the first year and a half was we did a performance review. We chucked all of our regular assessments and we made the questions just about that, right? Where have you learned? Where have you grown? And where have you pivoted? So that really we were focusing on people's abilities to respond to extreme challenges and give them a time to find their own gifts in their performance, in our lives, and in our company culture. And I think that if we continue to phrase, what are the gifts, the 3 gifts, and we're constantly asking ourselves that about our work, our performance, our health, we're always going to be working on how we're writing the story. Again, the reason this appeals to me is because it's about changing the narrative. So if we look at this and think about how we never know how it's really going to be, right? We never know if this decision is going to be for the better or for the worse, but we work on the present and we ask ourselves, how are we writing the story? How are our saboteurs showing up? Are they the main characters or are our wise selves the main characters? Then we are going to be better employees, better managers, and better company in general, because we're always looking at how we're working at our best, where are the gifts, and how is my brain functioning in the most optimal way, right?
How can a company not thrive if you're decreasing conflict, if you're decreasing stress, if you're decreasing friction, if you're decreasing individual burnout? Even if it's just on individual performance,
absolutely,
that's huge. But then take in the mirror neurons that we do as how we affect each other. And there's a lot of research that Shirzad has presented in different white papers, how this impacts sales efforts, teams functioning. The whole Google Aristotle project relies on some of this research. And then retention. which I'm sure Anna's very much aware of. These are all things that can come out of using this framework in a company and as individuals who are part of teams and companies.
Lisa, that's exactly where I want to end today with, is those of you out there who really love the data and really further need to believe that this could be helpful, or maybe would it be helpful for your staff. I just want to give you some of the research that this is based on. It's in the book, but he says an analysis of more than 200 different scientific studies, which collectively tested more than 275,000 people, concluded that higher PQ leads to higher salary and greater success in the areas of work, marriage, health, sociability, friendship, and creativity. Well, that's a lot. Also, salespeople with higher PQ sell 37% more than their lower PQ counterparts. Negotiators with higher PQ are more likely to gain concessions, close deals, and forge important future business relationships as part of the contracts they negotiate. Higher PQ workers take fewer sick days and are less likely to become burned out or quit, which I think is what Anna was really talking about. And as somebody who's in charge of HR, she really looks at those numbers. Even doctors who have shifted to higher PQ make accurate diagnosis 19% faster. Students who have shifted to a higher PQ perform significantly better on math tests. So you can do this with young people, right? They look at it, and then it goes on and on. Higher PQ CEOs are more likely to lead happy teams who report that their work climate is more conducive to high performance. Project teams with higher PQ managers perform 31% better on average. I mean, blah, 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 right? It goes on and on and on. US Navy uses it with their squadrons. Lots of things that are super easy to do, super manageable. So if your teams are ready, or if you just want to offer it as an option to some people to do it, there's great folks out there that, like ourselves, that can help you facilitate it. But also you may have somebody even within your office that would be up for doing it. It can also just be a personal thing that you lead, or if you lead teams, try it and see if those mirror neurons that we're talking about start to have a positive effect without your teams even having to try it. But it's a really quick assessment. We'll put it in the liner notes so that you can access it. Thank you so much, Lisa and Anna, for joining us today. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for doing the work, and then also sharing it with your colleagues and making our company better, but also now sharing it here to hopefully help others in their organizations and in their lives a bit better. So I appreciate that. And everybody out there, I hope that you get a little PQ today, a little more positive intelligence based on listening to this, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.